On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues, and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode. It's great to be here again in the On the Track command module, even though I've been having some problems in this last week because Louis, our producer, who's better known to you all as Computer Boy...
Don't call me Computer Boy!
As I was saying, I've been having some problems with our producer Louis. He's behaving most oddly at the moment, and that's odd by the standards of the On the Track team, which is actually saying something. Apparently, according to my spies in West Sussex, he's wandering around the countryside late at night, making strange and peculiar whooping noises. And he's taken to phoning me up in the middle of the night and calling me by a series of most peculiar names that I truly don't understand.
J Swizzy!
You all know that my Christian name begins with a J, but what is a Swizzy? I have absolutely no idea. Please, I would like somebody to enlighten me. And my world of imaginary chickens and unlistenable to avant-garde soundscapes makes far more sense, at least to me, than the world that Louis and his generation seem to be living in. So please, ladies and gentlemen, can you answer this question for me? I know that old men of my age and dotage are not supposed to understand the younger generation. Is this just an example of this? Is it just me being an old man not understanding what the youngsters are up to? Or is Louis just being a complete prick? Now that's what I call enigmatic.
I really like the old credits.
Well, I thought I'd better show Louis what I'd said about him before I went ahead, and he thought it was massively amusing. But the fact is I don't understand anybody much, whatever their age is. However, one thing Louis did point out was that for some reason this shirt that I'm wearing, which is once again my Lauren Coleman gifted International Cryptozoology Museum shirt, looks like it's covered in dust. Well, I would like to say that it was because I am doing a homage, if you like, to the cover of one of my favourite records. Local Anaesthetic by Nirvana. Yes, boys and girls, there was a band called Nirvana well over a decade and a half before the Nirvana that you guys are thinking of. And they're really good. Check this album out because it really is one of these ones that will blow your mind. Oh dear. Do I really sound like an old hippie?
Yes!
Thank you very much to Ronnie Rooster for that vote of confidence. Well, it's been a bloody awful day, and it's not been made any the better by the news that came through this afternoon while I was filming that Charlie Watts, drummer of the Rolling Stones since 1963, died at the age of 80. The world will be a much poorer place without him. But I do have some really good news for you all about one of the cryptozoological creatures that we've featured in this show over the years. The large tortoiseshell, a butterfly which was supposedly extinct in Britain since the early 1950s. Well, as we've pointed out to you over the years, there have been sightings of this butterfly in Britain most years. But although there have been rumours of it having bred, most notably in a National Trust property in South Devon about 10 years ago, the rumours have never been confirmed. Not until now, because this year none other than Pete Eales of the Great UK Butterflies website has confirmed that there are at least 3 occasions in Britain this year, in Norfolk, in Dorset and in Sussex, where the large tortoiseshell has bred. This is probably the most exciting news for British butterfly enthusiasts all century. Yes, there have been other exciting pieces of news over the years, but this does suggest that one of our lost species has returned. And the big question is not only what happens next, but was it a natural occurrence, or was it because of the work of one of the reintroductionists who work clandestinely to do what the British government and DEFRA really should be doing, but don't. But something that I think really should be noted is that even before these records were made, there have been reports of large tortoiseshells in record numbers from all over the southern parts of our island. Quite early on in the year, Pete Eales, yes, him again, because he really is one of the biggest movers and shakers in the world of British butterflies, started a list, a register if you like, of large tortoiseshell sightings across the United Kingdom. And the results were astounding. Look at this. The most interesting thing about this is the wide distribution of these sightings. As you can see, the sightings start off relatively early in the year. But the fact that they are so widely distributed does preclude, or at least as far as I'm concerned, does preclude the idea that they are the result of a huge influx of these butterflies from continental Europe, probably as the result of a population explosion in, say, France or Germany. Because if they had been the result of a population explosion, all of the sightings would have been most likely in the same area. For example, if there had been a population explosion in France, the sightings would have been in Sussex, Hampshire and Kent. But as you can see, they're all over the place at the same time. And therefore, either there is a huge population explosion all over Europe for some unknown reason, or there is another mechanism at work. So the other logical inference is that these butterflies are adults who overwintered. But why this year in such numbers? Or rather, why last year in such numbers? I know it's been a weird year with COVID and all that, but I can't see how that in any way would affect the numbers of a medium-sized British butterfly, or rather non-British butterfly, being found in Britain for the first time in years. So, even if they did overwinter in certain numbers, in sizable numbers, why, how, and where? These are all questions which remain to be answered, and they are only one of several interesting stories about British butterflies which have come to my notice in recent days. But Although I find British butterflies totally fascinating, I know some people don't, so I'm going to pass you all over to something else. Okay, here we are again. It's Sunday morning, and Richard, me and the dog are sitting around talking about bibliophilia, because Richard and I are both bibliophiles, and both of us probably will end our days being crushed under an enormous mountain of books that we are meaning to read that's by our beds. So, Richard, for the third book today, what is it?
It's the original edition of Dr. Karl Shuker's Extraordinary Animals Worldwide. Karl Shuker is a long-term friend and colleague of the CSZ. This is one of his earlier books, and what's interesting about it is it's not really about cryptozoology per se. It's got chapters in it on things like the crested crowing cobra and possible new species of rhino, but also it's got chapters on the echidna and the duck-billed platypus. It's got chapters on the singing dog of New Guinea, flying squirrels, birds of paradise, the standard winged nightjar, solifugids, all kinds of odd animals that are not usually covered in zoological books, and its actual layout and pictures, and I think this is done deliberately, mimic the old Victorian books on zoology. It reminds me of a little bit of Willie Lay's book. What's it called? Exotic Zoology. But I mean, I've picked up loads of old Victorian zoology books, and the illustrations are very similar, the layout's similar, and the feel of it is similar. It feels more like enthusiast in the field than stuffy academic in the laboratory.
What I like about it, and the reason that we reprinted an updated version, is that like Richard says, and like the title proclaims, it is about extraordinary animals from around the world. And Karl, like me and Richard, is a big fan of the late Victorian engraving style. I think that artwork is remarkably pleasing to the eye, and Karl collects Victorian natural history engravings, so this book here and the later edition, which is called Extraordinary Animals Revisited, showcases his collection of 19th century animal engravings, which to me would be a perfectly valid excuse for a book in itself. I particularly like the chapter on solifugids, and is this the one that's got the daisy dog in?
Yes, it has. It has got the daisy dog.
I find the daisy dog absolutely fascinating. Richard, you tell us the story of the daisy dog.
I can't tell you the story of the daisy dog because I've completely forgotten it. I only know it's a spectral Pekingese, if I remember correctly.
Hasn't it got something to do with Queen Elizabeth I and the ship sinking?
Yes, allegedly there was one of Queen Elizabeth I's courtiers, ladies-in-waiting, was on her way back to England in a merchant ship carrying amongst other stuff, a Pekingese, which was a gift to Queen Elizabeth from a Eastern potentate. And when there was a shipwreck, and both the lady-in-waiting and the peculiar-looking dog both died, and they're still seen today.
They're thrown overboard, aren't
Sorry?
I think they were thrown overboard.
I can't. Let's have a look. This is ridiculous. I can't remember the story. And that was my glasses being stupid. Carry on. One thing I actually remember, this one, the Robert de Surek sea serpent sighting. I remember when that happened, and I remember a story on the radio, rediffusion radio in Hong Kong in the 60s, all about it, and it totally blew me away. Fantastic story. And then when I discovered it again in this book, and of course in 49, and of course in Heuvelmann's In the Wake of the Sea Serpents, it suddenly brought back my childhood excitement back. Okay, here we have, the story goes. This time is in the Elizabethan era. England's monarch, Elizabeth I, was held in awe not only by her country's subjects, but also by the world at large. Her fame travelled widely and sometimes inspired accounts that bordered upon the mystical and legendary. According to one of these, news of England's glorious monarch even penetrated as far as China, to the excuse that its own empress considered Elizabeth I to be a goddess, and as such deserving of the most precious gift he could offer, namely a pair of the sacred dogs of China, those small golden leonine creatures carried in the sleeves of mandarins and known today as Pekinese. Needless to say, such precious animals could not be sent to England unaccompanied, without the necessary retinue that their sacred status demanded, and so as an entire company was sent with them, comprising of a royal princess as the personal guardian for the dogs, a peerless mandarin as her guardian, a team of slaves and bodyguards to complete the entourage, plus an immense amount of gold to cover the expenses of the journey to England, and to serve as an additional gift to the English Queen. Finally, as an ultimate precaution for their safety, the female Pekingese was placed in a tiny ivory kennel, wrapped in gold-embroidered silk, and a jewel-encrusted collar was placed round her neck. For the final stage of the journey, they were on board a ship crewed by Cornish fishermen, whose knowledge of the passengers' immense wealth and noble origin was initially sufficient to quell the superstitious doubts they had concerning the silent princess, the inscrutable mandarin, and the strange dogs. Yet as the voyage continues and the blustery winds and rolling waves became more violent, with black storm clouds filling the skies, and the skies seemingly intent upon sinking the ship and drowning everyone aboard her, the fishermen's fears intensified. In their eyes, the Chinese princess was a malevolent witch who would drive them all to disaster. Well, we all know what's going to happen next, sort of. There was a mutiny, and the ship's captain was murdered along with the hapless mandarin and slave, and the wild-eyed crew burst into the princess's cabin, threw her overboard. One of the fishermen stretched out his hand to her gold-wrapped box, and swiftly drew it back again, bleeding from a sharp bite inflicted by something inside it. Uncontrollable fear then overcame all of them, and the mysterious box, regardless of whether or not it contained gold, was quickly cast overboard too. Now the waves cast both the princess's body and the box onto the Cornish shore, and the area was soon deemed to be by locals to be haunted, a place of evil and ill fortune, so not even tales of the murdered princess's gold could persuade anyone to visit this forsaken spot. Not that is, until one day when a good but simple-minded man came along. He saw the body of the princess and clambered down to the shore to see if he could do anything to help. Finding she was dead, he cried, but as he did so, he found something move inside one of her long sleeves, so he carefully opened the sleeve, and to his great surprise he found huddled within it a very small silky dog on a tiny gold-wrapped box. The little dog looked into the man's face, weakly wagged his tail, then allowed him to take off the box's silken covering. He found inside a broken ivory kennel, which he carefully opened to reveal the body of the tiny mother and her puppies, all dead. The simple-minded man was a nice man. Why is it in folk stories the simple-minded are always nice, where in reality quite often the opposite is the case? But the simple-minded man buried the princess and the dead dogs, and the little dog stayed on top of the grave, wagged his tail for the last time and died. And people have seen what they call the daisy dog, because there are daisies on this grave where the doggy died, and people have seen this ghost, this apparition, in modern times. And whether or not you believe in ghosts, it's a lovely story, but if you do believe in ghosts, this is the ghost of the first Pekingese dog ever to come to England.
Why did they go all the way to Cornwall if they were going to present them to...
Because they didn't. Cornwall, if you think of it, hang on, I'll shut the... No, if you think of it, Cornwall would be the first bit of England that they would see.
You'd have had to have come all the way round
bottom of Africa.
Bottom of Africa. It would have been easier to go across land, surely, wouldn't it? And
well, you'd better go and steal a TARDIS and tell the Chinese king, that emperor, that.
Is there any other historical precedent for this story, or is it just completely made up? Surely there must be some record. If it was
I have no idea.
I think it's a bit of a myth.
It sounds to me like something that was completely made up.
But it's a nice story.
Like, Eskimos.
Or Old English Spangles.
Or the island of Formosa. Completely made up. If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who is a regular visit to the studio, wants me to remind you, always remember to ring the notification bell. Otherwise, you won't be told when we've got a new show available. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is just about it for this episode. But I have one last thing to talk to you about. Look at this. Look at this remarkably shiny, glossy artifact which I'm holding in my hand. This is the legendary book about the Russian Almasty and Yeti sightings by the equally legendary Boris Porshnev, who died very nearly 50 years ago. This book was written in the early 60s and distributed in a very small print run, which actually was of an unfinished manuscript of something like, how many did we talk about? 180 copies. Only 180 copies were ever distributed, and they were in Russian. Some years ago, Richard Freeman managed to get hold of Poroshenev's grandson, and Poroshenev's grandson was kind enough to say that we could salvage the manuscript, have it translated into English, and publish it ourselves after all these years. So that's exactly what we did. I want to say an enormous thank you to Lars Thomas, who translated it into English, and to Dr. Chris Clark, who then went and edited it. This is a remarkable piece of work, and it is a remarkable concatenation of effort by 3 or 4 different people to get it ready. It would have been finished several years ago, but I'm afraid my efforts in the last few years have been looking after Karina as she died. But I'm now moving on with my life. The CFZ is moving on with its life, and this book is now available for sale at a specially discounted rate through the CFZ website. So go and have a look on www.cfz.org.uk. In fact, Louise keeps on telling me that I don't have to use the word www anymore. But go check out the CFZ website, and there is a special offer there. So please go and have a look and buy this book. It is a fascinating document of a time which is fast becoming forgotten. Well done to all involved. And that is now the end of the episode. Thank you very much to everybody. I want to say a big thank you to Louis, Graham, Richard, Karl, and to Sarah, and to Maxine, and to Charlotte, all who have done their own inimitable thing, and without whom this episode would not have come out. And we're at the end of it, but never fear, you've only got to wait another 7 days, because Saturday afternoon is on the track time, and next Saturday afternoon I'll be there at 3 o'clock, and if you'll be there, I'll be seeing you.